Howdy again everyone, and recently I've had the pleasure of testing out Canon's latest flagship ultra-wide-angle zoom lens, the RF 15-35mm f2.8 L IS USM. It costs a massive $2,300 and £2,300 in the UK, and it's only for Canon's EOS R full-frame mirrorless cameras. Canon have said that their new lenses for mirrorless EOS R cameras would all have extra little features to elevate them above their older EF digital SLR counterparts, which in this case would be the 16-35 f2.8 Mark III. Well, this new RF lens can give you a slightly wider angle of 15mm, which is gapingly wide on a full-frame camera, as you can see here. Well, aside from a nice zoom range, this lens also features image stabilization. Here's some footage with that image stabilization turned off and now turned on. It works silently and, as you can see, really efficiently, helping you to get some great pictures in low light conditions. So you're paying a huge amount of money for this lens, but at least those extra features mean that you're getting one of the most flexible ultra-wide-angle zoom lenses on the market today. Well, let's take a look at its build quality. The first thing you notice is that the lens is huge. Here it is on the center right, and it's the biggest ultra-wide-angle zoom lens I've ever handled. It weighs 840 grams, or almost 2 pounds. It's made of decent quality plastics and based on a metal lens mount with a nice weather sealing gasket at the rear. Canon claim the lens is quite well weather sealed overall, although as usual I'm too chicken to get it wet and test it out. The front glass element of the lens is fluorine coated, which makes it very easy to clean from dust and wetness. The rubberized zoom ring turns quite evenly without any stickiness, but it doesn't feel amazingly smooth to turn. This was a new copy of the lens though, so perhaps it'll get slightly smoother over time. Next comes the rubberized focus ring. It's electronically coupled to the focus motor, but it works fantastically quickly and really responsively. Video makers might like to know about the lens's focus breathing. At 35mm, the image zooms out just a little bit when you focus more closely. Zoom out to 15mm and the focus breathing is a little stronger, but hardly disastrous. When you're shooting in stills mode, the autofocus motor works accurately and almost instantaneously, and unless you hold your ear to the lens's body, silently. When shooting video, the focus motor slows down just a little, but your microphone won't pick up any noise from it working. Very nice. At the front of the lens you can see an extra control ring which can be set in your camera's menu to do various things. It has gentle clicks to it, but Canon offer a service to de-click it for you if you want, which is a service you have to pay for. The lens has an 82mm filter thread on the front, which will be super useful for landscape photography. I tested it out with my Haider M10 square filter system and a couple of filters, and I couldn't see any vignetting. It also worked nicely with this breakthrough X2 polarizing filter, which has quite a slim profile. You probably wouldn't want a thicker filter than this, though. The lens comes with a pouch, lens caps, and a fairly small hood. Overall, apart from its slightly huge size, the build quality is perfect and the lens's electronics work extremely well. But more important is image quality. I'm testing it on a Canon EOS R with its 30MP full-frame sensor, the highest resolution EOS R camera available at the time of making this review. At 15mm and at the widest aperture of f2.8 in the middle of the image, picture quality is razor sharp with great contrast. The corners are very good too, although not quite as bitingly sharp. Stop down to f5.6 or f8 for some tiny improvements in sharpness in the corners. Stop down to f16 and the effects of diffraction begin to soften the image. Let's zoom in halfway to 24mm. At f2.8, again, the middle of the image sees perfect image quality. The corners are a little better at f2.8 than they were at 15mm, looking nicely sharp now, and there's an improvement if you stop down to f4. That's as sharp as the corners get at 24mm. And finally, let's zoom all the way into 35mm. Again, we see perfect image quality in the middle, straight from f2.8. And again, corner image quality is very good, but not perfect at f2.8. Stop down to f4, f5.6 and f8 for minuscule little improvements that add up to a really excellent sharpness there. So overall, yes, the RF 15-35mm is brilliantly sharp with nice neutral colours and great contrast. Its image corners could be perhaps just a little punchier at f2.8, but an edge of extra sharpness does come along when the aperture is topped down. Well, let's move on and look at distortion and vignetting. These are normally corrected in your camera, but you can turn those corrections off to see the lens's real performance. At 15mm, we see noticeable barrel distortion with a slight moustache pattern to it. Vignetting at f2.8 is very strong. The corners slowly brighten up as you stop down to f4, f5.6 or f8, but without corrections you'll always see some vignetting there. If you zoom into 19mm, then the distortion straightens out, or at least as much as it can do. Zoom all the way into 35mm and we see some moderate pincushion distortion with slightly more gentle vignetting this time at f2.8. Again, stop down to f4 or f5.6 to see it mostly cleared up. So really, this lens's vignetting and distortion is averagely bad, I would say, so you will want to use corrections. The lens can focus as closely as 27cm to your subject, pretty useful for shooting smaller objects. At f2.8, contrast drops out of your image when shooting close up, but simply stop down to f4 to see it return for excellent image quality. Now let's see how well the lens performs against bright lights. At wide angles, there are small points of flaring, but contrast remains high. Zoom in and contrast is slightly more affected. And while we're working in the dark, let's look at chroma levels. Even at 15mm and f2.8, bright points of light in the corners don't really show any chroma smearing, which makes the lens a great option for astrophotography, potentially. We also see a bit of a sun star here, even at f2.8. Stop down as far as f8 and those sun stars get nice and strong. And finally, bokeh. Get close enough to your subject and you can get some background separation at f2.8. On the whole, the quality of this lens's bokeh looks nice and smooth. So overall, the RF 15-35mm f2.8 L IS USM really is just about the most accomplished ultra-wide angle zoom lens Canon have ever put to market. It doesn't quite master the problems of vignetting and distortion, and I've seen ultra-wide angle lenses with slightly sharper corners than this, but it's undeniably just an excellent all-rounder. The broad zoom range, bright maximum aperture, image stabilization, ability to use filters, great sharpness and contrast, and low chroma levels all add up to bring you one of the most comprehensive and dependable ultra-wide angle zoom lenses ever. So, despite its huge price and huge size, it still comes highly recommended.